Hey everyone, this is Luke Evans, your host for Uncovering the Litanies. Thank you for joining us for part 2 of the Litany for Vocations with Father Dan Schmitmeyer. Enjoy. So how can parents be open to their children choosing religious faith if that calling may seem foreign to them?
And that is a challenge for some. Parents have disowned their kids. They've been very frustrated. They've told them absolutely not. Now, as a kid growing up, I'm one of 6 kids in a family, and my parents would always say, one of the 6 of you has to be a priest or religious. You just have to accept that. And I think 27, I went home, I was godfather for one of my nephews, and mom and dad, after baptism, if you're not married by the time you're 30, you're going to the seminary. I'm like, I'm not going to the seminary. But yeah, parents they need to talk about it and not complain about the priest. Because if the parents are complaining about the priest all the time, the kids can be like, yeah, I want to do that.
Right.
And so to be open to that, and yes, the parents love their child. Yeah. Of course they do. They want the best for their child. Mm-hmm. But if they could, as they're thinking about how to interact with their child about the vocation, realize that God loves their child even more than they do. Mm-hmm. And God wants the best for them.
Well, I could see it definitely being a sort of hard to understand as a parent because they obviously were not chosen for religious life or the priesthood, so they're like, okay, what's normal? What like this is definitely like what their heart and soul is marriage, like that's what they've called it. And then they have a kid and they're like, I want to be a priest. Like, no, you don't want to be a priest.
Exactly. Well, and it is. It's hard for them, and it's hard for the kid too, because you don't go to the seminary knowing you're going to be ordained a priest. Mm-hmm. You come here to discern and figure it out, and so you're not 100% sure. Is this one of parents are like, oh, we have to be 100% sure before I'll do this. But Archbishop Schnurr shared the story when he was Bishop of Duluth. There was a young man who wanted to go to the seminary right out of high school, and his parents were like, you're going to be a doctor or a lawyer. And so he went to college and was doing the pre-med, pre-law thing and finished and would have been accepted for either being a doctor or a lawyer, I think. And the Archbishop went over to the family's house for supper, and he was basically saying, your son's incredible, God gave him so many gifts and he would be great at that. But he really is drawn to this priesthood, and give him a couple of years because God loves him. Let him check it out. And so he was very excited when that young man got ordained a priest.
That's
good. But it's interesting for me too, because we just had a guy discern out, and he had emailed me, and I was like, you're making one of the most courageous decisions you can make. And I'm very proud of you, and I'm very happy. Because that's the thing, people think, the priest is just going to be mad at me if I don't get ordained, or the vocation is going to be mad because I'm saying no. I'm like, my job is to help you get to heaven. Yeah. Right. This is going to help you get to heaven.
Well, it's not really saying no to you, it's saying yes to God.
Exactly. And that's what I want the most of.
Okay. So to go back to the graduating at this seminary, if you were to go to your 4 years of college at a college, you would graduate college.
Yep.
And then if you chose to go to seminary, you go to seminary and finish your. But if you chose to go to seminary right after your high school graduation, is there like a graduation ceremony here in the class of 2024?
Right, yeah. See, for both the college seminaries, the Josephinum in Brute, and for the major seminary, there's a graduation every year. And so, as a priest, you'll have a Master's of Divinity, and then also you have the option for getting a Master's of Biblical Studies and a Master of Arts in Theology. And we had to come to the graduation, because when I was a student here, they didn't have graduation until like October. And so I was over 2 hours away at my parish's. Graduation was Sunday afternoon. So I had my 3 masses Sunday morning, and then I drove 2 hours to Cincinnati to walk and get my degree, because Archbishop Pilarczyk was like, I want all the guys there. And when I got my master's degree from Ohio State, I didn't go through the ceremony. I'm like, yeah, they'll just send it to me. That's fine.
Yeah.
So yeah, they do have that. And people get very excited about it.
Have you ever been to the seminary in Rome before?
Yeah, I've been to the NAC, the North American College, and then I'd only been ordained for a year or so, and I went to Rome. Father Brausch, who was our rector of our seminary here, and Bishop Fernandez, Bishop Earl, the Bishop of Columbus, they were both studying in Rome at the time, so I stayed at the priest house for all the U.S. priests who were studying there to get advanced degrees.
Okay. Did you get to meet the Pope?
One of the however many thousands at the Wednesday audience. But it was very funny because I'm average height. I'm 6'6".
Oh, yeah.
And so
Average.
Bishop Earl got me tickets for the audience because there's a special place where you can sit that's a little closer with the still forever back. And the nun who gave me my ticket, she's like, now, Father Dan, Bishop Earl said you're a nice guy and you'll let people in front of you. But I just want you to know there are sisters who go there every week and they shove their way to the front row. And you just shove them back out of the way so that you can be in the front. And I hate being in front of people because they can't see and then they'll make comments about they can't see.
Now I'm short, so I have to deal with that. So.
Exactly.
You have an excuse to shove all the nuns out of the way, Luke.
So I was just like, okay, yeah, this will be fine. But one of the neat things with that is I had we'd gone into the Vatican, St. Peter's, and Bishop Earl spoke Italian, so he talked to the guard and let me go down into the undercroft to see the tomb of St. Peter, the first pope, Jesus' friend.
Oh, I saw that when I went to the catacombs.
Yeah, you usually have to have be in a group or something, so I gotta go.
By yourself?
Yeah, well,
Wow.
with Bishop Earl. But a couple years later, I was back in Rome for my 10th anniversary and my sister and brother-in-law's 30th. We decided to go to Rome and then to Dublin. And so we're in Rome, or in Italy, and we're in Rome, and we go to the Basilica of St. Peter's, and my sister Sue was like, I want to see St. Peter's too. I'm like, you have to be part of a group, and we're not part of a group. And I don't speak Italian, and I'm not going to be able to explain it. I said, yeah, they've got altars downstairs because I was going to celebrate Mass. So priests, you show up, they give you the vestments, the books, and they take you to an altar. And I'm like, so start praying because if they take us downstairs, we'll be able to see it. And so I got in, I got vested, and the secretary takes us out and say, I think I'll take you downstairs. It looks like all these altars are full. And I saw 10 open altars. I'm like, okay, so we had Mass at an altar right next to the tomb of St. Peter, the first pope.
And you said the Mass?
Yeah. And my sister said, like, you need to keep praying. You need to take care of this. Because that was amazing. Yeah.
Yes.
So I could, in some Catholic circles, and specifically it's probably easier to say this if you are married or a priest, it can be seen like when people talk about the chaste single life, a lot of Catholics can be, oh, that's not really a vocation, it's more just like what you do if you're not like called to a vocation. So is it even possible to discern and choose a chaste single life, or is it just sort of like a label for people who can't really find their place anywhere? Right,
and like you said, there are people who believe it's just for those who couldn't do anything else.
Yeah.
And I've been blessed and fortunate. My best friend, we've been best friends since we were in kindergarten, since we were 5 years old. He is the 11th of 12 children in his family. His goal was always to get married and have at least 10 kids of his own. And my buddy has dated some of the most incredible women I have ever met in my life. They are smart, they are holy, they are beautiful. They would date for a year and he would break it off. And be like, I was praying about it and I love her, but I don't love her the way you're supposed to love your spouse. And God made it very clear in prayer, I shouldn't marry her. And after a year of dating is enough because I need to let her be free to meet someone else. And so when I finally went to the seminary, our friends all thought Jack would come with me because they thought Jack would go first and drag me kicking and screaming. And Jack came down to visit a couple times, and we were talking one night. That's one of the fun things with a friend you've had since you were 5. You can talk about anything. And he's like, he's like, I want to be married and be a husband and father so badly, and I would love to be a priest if that wasn't it. And he's like, I keep praying about it, and I realize God wants me to live the chaste single life. I have to live a chaste single life, and I have to be a model for my nieces and nephews of how to live in the world as a man of faith while still just living in the world without that spouse to help.
Yeah.
And so he's had a number of his nephews want him to be their best man or be their groomsman because he inspires them so much. It's like, he is such a holy man, and it's great that he is living this vocation. And so that's wonderful. But unfortunately, there's a lot of people out there like, that's the failure vocation. And so people are embarrassed of it. It's like, that is not a failure.
Yeah.
And it's like any other vocation, when you're called to it, you're not always sure that's what you want to do.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, how do I do that?
Well, I guess it probably would be a little bit harder to also discern and choose the chaste single life because there's no 10 years of school, there's no, discerning of the priest and
how do I
making
do
a commitment.
Right. So I do get calls from men and women periodically who want to talk about the chaste single life. And the biggest thing usually is they just hope that I will tell them that they're not a failure.
Yeah.
It's like, you are not a failure. Love God, do God's will.
So it seems like it's much easier to stay on the path of God, or like in the faith, when you're living a religious life, it's always like centered around God.
Right.
Like, you don't really find that many Catholic priests that are like not Catholic,
Right.
But a marriage, on the other hand, is more secular. There's it's not always circulating around God. And is this your experience as a priest, or do you have it? Is it like
Right. Well, and it's a different thing, and usually the lay people don't see or even know the temptations the priest is getting. Because I remember as a seminarian, I had written a paper on one of the saints, and she died. She was in her 20s, and she'd been in the cloistered convent since she was 12. So I hadn't been outside the convent since she was 12.
Wow.
And she's writing about how she is the worst sinner in the world. And I'm thinking, yeah, I don't think so. But then she wrote further, because I've been living here in this cloistered community with other sisters, and we help each other, we share the faith, we pray, we sing, we do all of this, and we know better. And we're still gossiping once in a while and thinking bad things about people. I know better. And I have all the benefits to keep me holy, and I'm still not doing it.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of interesting when you look at the faith like that. And as a priest, you have to be aware all the time of the temptations that are out there, because there are a lot. And I drive a lot as vocation director, and I get some road rage going once in a while. And especially when I was first ordained too. When I'm driving, I was feeling my collar. I'm like, okay, dressed up as a priest, a blessing instead of other hand gestures to annoying drivers. But as well as it's like, and because as the priest, you have a bad day, you say one sharp thing to someone, and they will quit going to Mass for the rest of their lives because the priest was mean.
Wow.
Yeah, and then you've got the other part too, which is a challenge, that when you're talking with your parishioners and they're talking about a sin they're struggling with, and you're trying to help them, but they're not at the point where you can actually explain the fullness of the church's teaching, because they're not going to understand.
Right. Yeah.
And so making sure you're telling them the truth in a way that you can have another conversation with it. But just being scared to death that you're like, if I say something just by accident, I take that sin on my soul.
Right.
And so that's the hard part. Yeah.
So just to sort of go off of what Luke was saying, like I guess one could say, looking at it statistically, you want to stay, I want to go to heaven, I want to be united with God eventually. It seems like if you look at this, okay, when you're a priest, you have a 90% chance of going to heaven, and when you're married, you have a 50% chance of going.
Well, more is expected of us too, because we know better.
Well, yes, but I could see one saying, yes, there is more expected of you because you're a priest, because you know better, and there's greater consequences. But if you look at the end, and you look at the end of all your goals as being salvation, living the life as a priest, when you're praying every day, you're saying Mass, you're in constant presence of the sacraments, like that could, if I'm not sure if anyone looks at it like this in sort of a robotic sense, but if one was to look at that and say, well, yes, but if you're a priest, you have a higher chance of going to heaven. I want to do this because it seems like you're closer to God, versus marriage, which there is a secular version of it, and
Well, and we see that in scriptures too, in St. Paul's writing. Single people, you should stay single because you'll think about God as opposed to how to make enough money for your wife and family. And so that's a good thing to keep in mind. But doing and being who God wants you to be is even more important than doing that, if that's not what you're calling. We don't need the angry, bitter priest. You hate the priesthood and hate the church. And a big thing, one of the things you said, which is true, but for priesthood and marriage and all vocations, you need to maintain that prayer life all the time. As a priest, we promise that we will pray the Liturgy of the Hours 5 times a day for all the people of the world. And if it was not for the people of the world, but if as a priest I was praying the Liturgy of the Hours for me, when I was tired or just overwhelmed, I probably wouldn't have prayed it because it's for me. I'm fine without. But since I'm praying it for the people of the world, I think 5 times in the past 18 years, I have not completed all 5 hours in a day because I was really sick. And now it's so great because I've got an app where they will say it for you.
Okay.
And so when I'm really feeling sick, I can just play that.
Oh, nice.
But yeah, prayer is important because otherwise, and frequent confession. And I think that's one of the neat things too, is I never thought about priests going to confession before. And I really had hoped that as a priest I could absolve my own sins. And so all day long, every day I just walk around, I absolve me of my sins. I absolve me of my sins. But when I was a pastor, I hadn't been able to go to confession that week, and I went to the associate because we were fortunate. The parish we were in, it had always been a confession-going parish. We talked more about confession, so they would see us go back and forth to each other's confessional to go to confession. And the people of God can be a gossipy group, and so they started telling everyone, our priests are going to confession to each other. And so the people were like, well, if our priests are going to confession, maybe we should get warned. So we went from the 2 of us hearing confession for an hour every Saturday to 2 hours every Saturday, having 2 priests available.
Wow.
And a lot of times we would just keep going on.
Yeah.
And that was wonderful.
How often do you get to go to confession?
I go once a month. Sometimes I'll go a little more. And confession's huge for me. When I was in college, I fallen away from the faith. I decided I was an atheist for a while I was in grad school. I was a bad atheist because I still said my prayers every night. So I don't think you could be an atheist from McCartyville, Ohio.
Did you consider yourself an atheist, or?
Yeah, I tried, but I wasn't any good at it. I wasn't a good Catholic, I wasn't a good atheist at the time, but I had not been to confession in 13 and a half years. As I was working at Ohio State, and I went to confession, not in my parish, of course, because I want my priest to know that. I went to the cathedral downtown, and I went and, bless me, Father, for I've sinned. This is my last confession. It's like, I didn't catch, how long is it? I'm like, 13 and a half years. And I just braced myself for him to yell at me and tell me what a terrible, horrible person I was. And he said, oh, thank God you're back. And I finished confession, and I've never felt so good in my entire life. Everyone expects us to be perfect here on earth.
Yeah.
Confession, you're not supposed to be. And so I felt so good, I'm going to do this every month. This is just for healing for us, and it's a sacrament of healing. So that's been wonderful. So as a priest, I've been grateful that I've had that opportunity.
What would you say?
Confessions.
That's great. What would you say to priests who maybe they've been in the confessional for a couple hours or getting tired, they want to go watch the Buckeyes game or something, and and they come out of the confessional and a person comes up, may hear my confession, no, I just finished, or maybe that person who's maybe hesitant to ask a priest.
Right. Yeah, be friendly, be welcoming, and try not to deny the sacrament of reconciliation to anyone if you don't have to. I mean, there are times where Mass is starting in 2 minutes and I'm presiding and I'm still in the confessional.
Oh, wow.
And so somebody goes, can you just hear mine real quickly? Mass starts in 45 seconds. I need to get vested.
Yeah.
And so stay after Mass and we'll hear confessions then. And the other thing is a priest, when you go to parish picnics or village festivals, and the drunk people come up, oh, I need to hear my confession right now. Let's do it tomorrow at 9 in the morning when you're sober.
Have you ever been late for Mass during confession anytime?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
It's happened a few
what
times.
do you do? Like, just
It's
music
like,
just started?
people see you walking out of the confessional.
Has the music like started?
Oh, no. Yeah, usually the choir knows if the priest is still confession, not to start. But yeah, that's always scary though, because I hate being late so much.
Yeah.
And I was always the person, I was at Mass 20, 30 minutes early. That's how my family did it. We always were church early, and so was a priest. Right. You run late quite often because you're doing a home visit with a homebound person.
Yeah.
And they've got some stuff they want to talk about. It's like, okay, I'm 45 minutes late for my next group.
Right.
So, yeah.
And I'm literally living right next to the church and I'm late.
Exactly.
Right. So Saint Gabriel, the archangel, conveyed to Mary God's plan for the incarnation.
Right.
Does this mean Gabriel can give us direction in the future as we discern?
Gabriel's the messenger, and Michael's the leader and the fighter, and Raphael is the companion on the journey.
Yeah.
The three of the archangels. That's what they specialize in. That's what they do best. So I'm always hoping Raphael will come with me, like in the book of Tobit.
Yes.
And that fish that tries to swallow my foot. And,
Yes.
You just tie that fish lever around.
That'll scare all demons away.
How do we ask Gabriel to?
We ask.
Just pray.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
We ask and intercede for me. Intercede. Go to Jesus for me. And going to Mary is probably the best intercession we can do if we're trying to discern our vocation.
So this is a question I specifically I've been thinking about recently because after high school I sort of have two different directions I want to go on. One of them would be go to the military, and I think I'm going to do that no matter what. Probably,
right.
But the other path that I'm sort of thinking is maybe do a mission trip or something like along those lines, maybe net ministries,
right.
like for a year after high school. And I'm getting close to the end of I'm just about to start my senior year, but either way, you definitely need to be in contact with either the military or a mission a while before you even go on those paths. And so I've been asking God for a sign, especially right after I received the Eucharist, but I don't even. Talking to one of my friends about this, and he said the issue is that a lot of times our expectations for God's sign is not the same thing as what we think.
What is really going to happen?
Exactly. So how do we ask for a sign from God, and what would that even look like? Right,
and we have to be careful when we're asking for the sign too, because it has to be completely pure. Because we read about that all the time in the Old Testament too. It's like, show me this sign, and I will do your will. It's like, no, you'll do my will no matter what, right?
Yeah.
Right? You're going to do my will no matter what, right? And so being careful with that, and like I had said earlier, when I was getting ready to be ordained, I finally just had to say, God, I'm doing this because I love you. Yeah. And if it's not right, make it clear. Otherwise, I'm moving forward. Yeah. And if it's not made clear, then
sometimes the sign isn't do this. It's like, I'm just going to pick this path and go for it. And if God doesn't want me to do it, then He'll stop me.
He'll make it clear, exactly. But also you have to be quiet, and that's one of the hardest parts of prayer. I think is meditating and just being quiet with the Lord and trying to listen for the whisper. And the whisper is not going to be words. It's going to be stirring of your heart. It's going to be a sense, this is the direction I need to go.
Yes.
It would be so much better if it was just really easy, Yes. But God gave us free will too, so He wants us to do it freely.
Will we know when we see the sign, or will we be like, yes?
Not always.
Oh, okay.
Not always, especially if your mind's busy and if you haven't quieted your mind, which I struggle to do. My mind's always thinking about something. And it's like, okay, so that's why I like Christian meditation, because I went through that whole atheist phase. I was trying some of the Eastern meditation things where you clear your mind of everything. I don't know how in the world anyone could ever do that, because I've never been able to do that. So Christian meditation, you focus on things. And so like I'll focus on the wounds of Christ if I'm suffering, and that will help me be quiet. So when my mind starts to wander, I'll be quiet. Yeah. But, and you also have to be careful, because sometimes people make things signs that aren't really signs. Like when I was a seminarian, we had a guy come for a lot of visits, and he's like, yep, I'm applying for seminary, I'll be there in the fall. And then school year started, he wasn't there, and I saw him somewhere. I'm like, oh, you're ready for seminary? He's like, God told me I should. And he gave me such a clear sign. I'm like, oh, what was it? Because I'm looking for a sign for me to leave seminary. And any chance I can get one, I'll take. And he's like, well, I was in church, and I was praying before Mary's altar, and a rose petal fell off of one of the rose blossoms on Mary's altar and hit the altar. And so that was my sign that God didn't want me to be a priest. I said, well, did you pray that there'd be roses on Mary's altar and that would happen? Or he's like, no, I just went to the church and pray, and it happened, so I realized that was my sign. Which it kind of reminded me of this one Simpsons episode where Homer's holding a plate of cookies. He's like, God, if you want me to eat these cookies, give me no sign. Thy will be done. No. No. But with looking at what you're doing with the military thing, especially because we've got the co-sponsorship with the Archdiocese of the military. And so we've got a number of seminarians studying for the Archdiocese who are also studying for the Archdiocese of the military. And so they get ordained, they do 3 years in Cincinnati, and then they do 5 years in the military. And they decide if they want to stay in the military, do the full 20 for retirement, or come back to the Archdiocese. And so we've had a number of priests who have done that, who are old military chaplains. We just had 2 of our guys leave last month to start their 5 years in the military as chaplains.
Wow. Wait, so they're priests, they get ordained, and then they do their 5 years as a chaplain?
Yeah, after they do 3 years as an associate.
Okay.
And then they'll do 5 years with the military.
Wow, that's super cool.
And it's great because Archbishop Schnur is allowing the guys to do that. Because Archbishop Pilarczyk was like, no, we need the priest here. And yes, we do. But Archbishop Schnur was like, yes, but we also need them, those men and women serving us, serving our country.
All right, so altar serving. What is the purpose of altar serving? Because, it's like, I love serving, don't get me wrong,
right.
But, you probably can find many priests that, have not served when they were young. There's probably
75%, the latest CARE results, which is this survey, they have the guys being ordained fill out. 74% of the priest ordained in 2023 had been altar servers.
Okay.
Oh, that's really cool. I didn't even know they had that statistic.
Yeah, they've had these things going on forever. And so it's nearly all the men who are priests who are altar servers, and the ones who weren't are typically the ones who converted into the faith when they were older.
Okay.
Father Henry.
Exactly.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
Nice. I got to see him yesterday too.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's funny.
I was meeting with a young man, his parent, and his mom, who's applying for seminary for next year.
Oh, that's awesome.
And it's the St. Catherine's guys. So
Yeah.
Nice.
We interviewed him for one of the episode, I think right before, no, 2 episodes ago.
Actually, it's Father Henry's brother Eddie.
Oh, yeah.
Is military chaplain, so he just left to do his 5 years with the military.
Oh, wow. The small world.
It is.
So, me and Luke are right now in high school. And it definitely seems like sort of the stereotype, and not just like, it just seems sort of like integral to the high school life to be guys are into the dating and like guys and girls, and they're all, it definitely seems like sort of part of the experience,
Right.
Or even just sort of like natural, like this is what teenagers do when they're all, when they're this age. So how do we, as teenagers, stay open to religious life in sort of the midst of this like romantic? Should we just like shut it down and be like, okay, no dating in high school, we shouldn't be doing this? Or
well, I mean, you talk with your parents. I think it's the first thing you should do.
Okay.
Is let them help you with that, because they've got a lot more experience, you know. And it's and a lot of people have said this, and I've seen it myself, that, you know, when I graduated from high school, I was 18. And I could not believe how stupid my parents were. And then when I finished college 4 years later, I was amazed how much they had learned in those 4 years. Because I finally was able to listen to them, as opposed to, they just harass me all the time. No one understands me. The teenage angst thing, I think I had that down pretty well. Yeah, and the dating, it kind of depends on you as a person and how you do it. Because I know people who've done very holy dating.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, okay, I'm doing this because this is going to lead possibly to marriage. And so we can meet each other, we can find out, we can pray. And, you know, I was fortunate, I dated a few women who were really good with that. I was not looking for that at all. I was looking for the most attractive woman who would go out with me. And having some money would have helped too, because I was always poor. And it's funny, I look at it going, I had some days that just were not fun because I was looking at the wrong thing.
Yeah.
And so just praying about it, talk to your parents about it, figure out what to do. But maintaining a prayer life is so important. Because I heard a lot of that when I was in Sydney. Layman Catholic is in the parish boundaries, and the religion teachers there have been outstanding. And they talk to the students about mortal sin, sexual sin, all of those types of things. And those kids were going to confession all the time and realized why it was important.
Yeah.
You know, to be pure, to realize you're marrying the person who's going to help you get to heaven.
Yeah.
And so doing something that's not going to help you get to heaven means you don't love that person.
Yes.
But having that prayer, taking the time with it, and thinking, which I think is something we all could do more of. It's like, okay, yes, I could do that, but that would say this, is that really what I want to do?
So before we wrap up here, and I know our culture is all about distilled information, and that's not always the greatest thing, but just if you were to give like 3 tips for someone who isn't married, who's still discerning what their vocation is, 3 tips like you should do this in figuring out and discerning your vocation.
Okay, so get to Mass as often as you can. So if you can go to daily Mass, do it.
Okay.
Pray a rosary every day and ask Mary to intercede for you. Try to get to adoration, or at least pray before the Blessed Sacrament in the Tabernacle for an hour a week.
Okay.
40 years, those are the 3 things that have helped men discern whether they should enter seminary or not, even at a time when there was not a lot of opportunities for adoration.
Yeah.
So those are the 3, but don't be afraid to move forward. Make an appointment with your vocation director. Probably half the guys I meet with, over half, never enter seminary. And I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
I want them to go to heaven. So don't be afraid.
Yeah.
Check it out.
Okay.
All right. Father Dan, thank you so much for joining us on an episode of Uncovering the Litanies.
Thank you.
Yeah, this is a very exciting talk. It's very great.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.